Welcome to the JorManager screencast tutorial. We're going to go through setting up a stake pool on the Cardano testnet, the Cardano Shelley testnet. This is different from mainnet, but it should give you everything you need to do to at least get a stake pool up and running with JorManager. So you'll see we're starting here at the JorManager download page. We've already gone ahead and downloaded the latest RC2 snapshot, and we've renamed it, and we put it in a file called, in our home folder, called Haskell JorManager test, because we're going to be setting this up on the testnet. So if we just list the files here, you can see that we have this jormanager.jar. You can ignore this here. This is just an old backup copy I have of things. So to get started, we first need to run the JorManager installer. And to do that, we've already installed our prerequisites, which is Java. So you can see we're running the correct version, Java 14. And so if we do java-jar, JorManager, and then we type the keyword install. And this should start our installer process. And it says we need to pick a listen IP address and localhost. That's the most secure for us. We don't really want people accessing JorManager from outside of this physical box. So we'll just accept the default there. And listen port 8787 is our default. This is the test environment, and I already have production running on 8787, so I'm going to go 9797 for this one. And next, it's asking us to set up our Pool Tool API key, where we send our tips to Pool Tool. Because this is a test environment, I don't want to send anything to Pool Tool for now. Typically, you would go to your profile on Pool Tool and get your API key and type that in here or copy paste it in here. We're just going to say none. And then the next is very important. This is the JorManager spinning password. This password is what encrypts all of the secrets inside of JorManager. So make sure you get this correct. Make sure you write it down. Make sure you store it in a secure location, maybe in a LastPass or a 1Password, somewhere where, you know, if all else fails, you can figure this one out. So we'll just type in a password here. And it is not going to be echoed to the screen for security reasons. And it'll ask me to verify it. And we'll do that. And so it said our application properties was created successfully. And then it's asking for a JorManager systemd startup script name. And the default is just jm.service. And we're going to go with jmtest.service. Just on the test network here. And then it's finally going to ask us for our sudo password so that we can actually create the systemd script. So I'll put that in now. And it says it's finished successfully, and it's created several files for us. So if we look here, we've got now a start JorManager, a stop JorManager, and we've got an application property. So let's take a look at some of these. So let's look at application properties first. You see we have our server port defined, our Pool Tool API key is not defined, which is correct, and then we have our spending password hash. So even if somebody were to steal this, they still would not be able to decrypt anything. This is just to verify that what you typed in is correct before we go ahead and use it internally to decrypt secrets in the database. This is a very difficult Argon 2 password hash to crack, so it would be nearly impossible to crack this. Let's take a look at the start script. And so here it's just going to do changing to the correct directory, and then it's going to run Java in a no-hup fashion, so it'll background it. We're setting some special flags to make it more difficult for somebody to hack Java. Mainly this disable attach mechanism that prevents somebody from attaching a debugger to the virtual machine while it's running and figuring out what's going on. We're using special garbage collectors, setting memory parameters, and then just running JorManager here. And we're also sending our output, if we run it in this manager, in this manner to JorManager.log. That's pretty much all it's doing, and then we're storing the process ID in a file so that we can then stop it if we need to. And that's kind of what the stop command is doing. It's running a number of kill commands in order from least invasive to most invasive, so at the very end of the day it will get shut down if you run this command. But that's not how we're actually going to run it for this demo. We also created some system control scripts. So if we look at some of those, so let's take a look at this service that it created. Description, and it will write things to syslog, and it's going to run kind of the same Java command to start things up, give us our home folder, files, limits, everything's going to syslog. So that should all be fine. And let's go ahead and use this mechanism to start it up. So we will just start jmtest.service and do that. We'll look at the status, and it looks like it is active and running here. So now let's go over to the browser and let's open a new tab and go to 9797. Let's not do a Google search on it. And you'll see we're here at the main window. We have RC2 running. Let's look through the tabs. There's hosts, there's nodes, and then there's wallet functionality. All of these start off as blank. And the very first thing we're going to want to do is create a local host, which is actually going to be just the same host we're running on. And this host will just be our default for doing things like transactions and creating the other stake pool. So it's not going to be a node that's connected to the outside world. It's just for our own use here. So let's go ahead and create a new host. And we'll say it's a local type. And I'm going to call this Brainy because that's the name of this machine. My local user. And we also have to have the prerequisites are to install Cardano CLI and Cardano node. And we'll just put in the paths to those. And the home folder for our nodes is going to be my username and the Haskell folder. And then we can also include, if you have JCLI from the ITN, that's used to validate if you had an ITN pool. You can sign some metadata and then it'll be validated on Pool Tool. So we'll put this in as well. And then we'll say validate and save. It validates all of those things and paths are correct for us, that it found all of those executables, and now we have a host that's local. Next, we're going to want to create a node on that host. So we'll say add a new Cardano node. And we want to pick a relay type, and we want to make it the default for sending transactions. And the color is actually the world's ugliest color we picked by default. Let's just make it a yellow or orange here. Host, we'll pick Brainy. Ticker, we'll just call it test. And some number of processor threads depending on what CPU you're running. You may want to have it. Minimum is 2. We're just going to throw it all the way up to 8. And then this is a relay, but we don't really want the outside world connecting into it. So we'll just use the local host address there. And our port, we'll just say 6000 for now. And then it's going to ask us for a Genesis for Byron and a Genesis for Shelley. Now JorManager has already downloaded all of the Genesis files we need from the IOHK build servers. So we can just pick them from the list. And we're going to be picking the testnet for this. So we'll take the testnet Byron and the testnet Shelley Genesis files. And then when we click save here, it should prompt us correctly now for our spending password. And then when we confirm that, now we see that our node is created successfully. And if we go over to our dashboard, we can wait a little bit and we'll start to see some data coming in from our, and it looks like it is moving up the blockchain just fine. I'll be honest, I pre-synced this one, so it is already on the tip. Normally it would take it a little while to sync and get up to the tip, but we wanted to move through this demo. So the next thing we need to do is create a stake pool, but in order to create a stake pool we need some funds. We need some money in a wallet. So let's go ahead and create a new wallet entry, and we'll call it funds. And this will be just a simple payment type of address, and we're going to generate it. So we'll say save. We need our spending password. And then now we have this new payment address and a zero balance. So on the testnet, to get us some funds, we'll copy this to clipboard. We'll go over to the faucet, and it's at this URL, Ian Cardano Tools Faucet. We'll put in our address, say I'm not a robot, and request some funds. And says we should have 1,000 ADA. Now if we go over to our tab and wait till the next block arrives, we should see some money show up here for us. And there we go. So there's our 1,000 ADA. And in order to create a stake pool, we need an owner account and optionally a rewards account. Let's go ahead and create both of those now. So we'll start a pool and we'll call it, we'll just call it Bob. And we'll need a staking address. Well, we'll call this Bob Owner, because this will be the owner staking address. And we'll just generate all the keys for him. Save that. Put in our spending password. So now there's Bob, and we notice that it is not registered on the chain. That's actually okay for right now. And let's go ahead and create another one. We'll create a rewards account for this stake pool as well. And so now we've got Bob Owner and Bob Rewards. They currently have no funds. Let's put a little something in the owner account so we can have some pledge, just something tiny. So we'll do a transaction. We'll send it to Bob Owner. We'll make it an amount, and we'll say send him 100 ADA. And then you see our fee is calculated for us, and we should have $8.99 when we're all said and done. Spending password, confirm, and it says our transaction succeeded. Now we just have to wait for the next block to see our funds show up in the Bob Owner account there. Let's take a look here. Maybe we can watch when the next block shows up. Okay, we got a new block, and we now have our money in the Bob Owner account. So let's go ahead and create our stake pool. So we'll say a new node, and Bob likes purple. We'll make Bob purple. Host is going to be on this one. Typically, you would put your core node on a separate server from where JorManager runs, but this is just a test network, so you would typically set up a remote host with SSH, etc. And this will be a core node. And now you see we have a whole lot more configuration to go through. Processor threads, we'll leave that the same. Core node typically is 127. And Bob will be on port 6001. And our Genesis will be the same, the testnet Genesis files. And now we need to generate some keys. So we need our cold pool keys, our VRF keys, and our KES keys. So we'll go ahead and we're just going to generate all of these. If you already had some from a pre-existing pool, you can just drag and drop the files into these fields and it'll pick them up, or you can use the browse button. And then sometimes what I do when I'm converting a pool over from one I've already created is I'll drag the cold keys over, the VRF keys over, and I'll just regenerate KES just to give myself an extra 90 days, because that one doesn't really matter whether it's fresh or whether it is one you've already got. Okay, so now we have to define our pool configs. And in order to pay for this pool creation transaction, it wants a fees payer account. And so we're just going to pay that out of funds. So it's going to be our 500 pool deposit plus, I think, 2 ADA each for registering the reward and the owner addresses on the chain. And so we've got enough in there. We'll say our owner account is Bob, and all the rewards are going to go to Bob Rewards. Our pledge, we're going to say, is 100, and our min cost is 340. And then you can set the margin wherever you want it. We say the minimum is 1%. Let's make this a 6% pool. Next is relays. So you can add some relays in here. This is a test network, so I'm going to enter some bogus ones. And we don't really care. This could be we'll say those are our 2 relays. So you can put either an IP address in here or an actual DNS name. It doesn't really matter. We don't currently support any of the multi-DNS or round-robin stuff currently. It's got to be separate entries. Metadata, this is all for getting your listing to show up in the wallets. So our ticker is Bob. Bob Stakepool is awesome. We'll say bobspool.com. And here, if you did run the Bob Stakepool in the ITN, you could drag and drop your ITN private key and public key to validate that you are in fact the same person who ran it during the ITN. Bob is a brand new pool, so we're not going to do that here. And then you can also put in any optional metadata you want. This will show up on places like ADA Pools or Pool Tool. We'll eventually use some of this stuff. We're just going to put in a Twitter account right now. We'll just put in my Twitter account just to have something here. And because this is on the testnet, it won't show up on Pool Tool or ADA Pools anyway. And again, we need our sudo password. And we'll say save, spending password. Confirming that, and this one will take a little bit to create. It's got to run a bunch of transactions. It says Bob created successfully. So now if we go over here we should see Bob show up. And it looks like Bob is already synced with the blockchain. So that's good. Let's take a look at our pool. So all the nodes created with JorManager follow this form. They have ticker name -node.service. So if we want to look at the status of Bob, we can see that it is running. It's running with the 8 cores. And let's check the same for our test. Same there. Let's look at one of those. Let's look at Bob. So this is what this startup script looks like. And you see this one, it does have our KES key, our VRF, and our opcert to run the node. Kill signal is SIGINT, so it shuts down gracefully if it ever restarts. And let's take a look at the other one, at test. So you can kind of see the difference there. So this one runs without the KES, VRF, and opcert. And let's look at anything running Cardano node. And so you'll see here we've got Bob running. You can see it's running with the KES and the opcert. And then we have, it looks like test running. Looks like I messed up and I put that on the same port as my other server, but that's okay. We can take a look at that some other time. But yeah, that's the basics of setting up and running a stake pool with JorManager. It can be monitored here. Any blocks you create will show up down below on the dashboard. Nodes, and again, wallet is here, and you'll see now that you notice both of these are registered on the chain. In any case, thanks for watching, and have